MURNIs. Drink it cold.
Dr. Vamsanda, Morangapanda, thanks very much for giving us this opportunity to host you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mseta. My, name is Vafui, Dr. JG Tshifularo. I prefer the name Vafui because it embraces everything. Yeah. Some people will call you Kosi, some people will say Vamsanda, some people will say Msanda, but to embrace all these names in one term, I prefer to be called Vafui. Thank you.
Your other name that we know you by goes by Gogome. Where is it coming from?
Oh, originally we are the Masingo. Okay. We are coming from the Chivase clan. And I got this history, from quite a number of people who related the history to me that were coming from the Mparara branch, so to say. Okay. Mparara is the son of Jiwo. Jiwo is the son of Rubengo Chivase. Okay. And this Rubengo Chivase is the son of Ralushiero. If you know the history of the Masingo, yes. The Chivase Masingo, it was the first one that is recorded here in Venda. It's Ralushiero. Then from Ralushiero, his son was Tobe Rubengo, who gave birth to Jiwo. And this Jiwo is the one who was, sent to Tononda to go and, be, I don't know whether can say Kosi or Bamsanda or Tobe there, but he was the ruler from Tononda. That is the father of, Mparara. Okay. Mparara then gave birth to his children. One of them is, Lusunzi Gogome. And the firstborn, I understand, it was Ratogwa, then Lusunzi, Gogome, then Temeri, then the Ramaphosa. These are the, four main sons of Mparara. This Gogome is the great-grandfather of my father. Okay. He was Gogome. That's why even today, when I was born, because I was born at Chiheni village. If you know Chiheni village, yes. It's one of the villages under Chivase authority. Yes. That's where I was born. My mother told me that I was born on a Tuesday evening on the 19th of September 1950 at a village, small village called Chungani. That's where I was born. Okay. And she told me, because by then when I was born, they were, Christians, attending church at Jonadit, United African Apostolic Church. And they were already baptized there. But I was named, if you know the story of Zachariah and his son John in the Bible, in Luke chapter 2, chapter 1 and 2, that's where they relate how Zachariah and his wife gave birth to their son Johannes. I was given the name Johannes. My father his name is Zachariah. I understand when I grew up, when I was born, it took time for me to walk. They said I crawled for some times until they, use, these traditional ways of trying to find out why is this boy not walking. And then they said, no, he needs a name. And then ultimately I was given the name Gogome. That's why I am JG Tshifularo. J is my first name, Johannes. And then the second name that I was given is Gogome. And Tshifularo is, my surname. And this Tshifularo is the son of the Gogome that I've mentioned, the son of Mpararara, Gogome Lusunzi. It's also a name of my great grandfather. It came down to my grandfather and then to my father. But this Gogome was always, parallel to this Tshifularo. So Tshifularo is, going back to my great grandfather until today. Now that's why today we are well known as Tshifularo, and yet we should have been maybe Gogome or Mparara or Chivas, because that is where we are found.
You said something about the name Ramaphosa. Is that name related to, or have any link with the current president?
Yes, of course. I got the history even today when somebody was relating the story this morning, that are you aware that you are related to the Ramaphosas? As I indicated earlier on, Mpararara had 4 houses. In Venda we say Ndu or Shitanga. That is, he had 4 wives. And these 4 wives gave birth to, the first one was Ratogwa. The second one was Gogome. The third one was Temeri. And the last one was Ramaphosa. And these are names that ultimately became surnames. Yes. But they are all under the very same Pararara Chivasi. They are coming from Pararara Chivasi. So we are from the same clan, the Parararas.
Let's come back to your upbringing. When did you start? How did you grow up? When did you start schooling? Up until...
Yeah, like I indicated, I was born in 1950 on the 19th of September at Chiheni. I started schooling at Chiheni in 1957. Most of the things I got them from my mother and my father. They related this story until I started knowing things. I mean, I remember when I started school, my mother was a lady teacher, a private lady teacher at Chiheni. She also taught me. My mother also taught me. So some of the things that I'm relating, I got them from my mother. When I was there at Chiheni, that was the time when, because of this, movement, my parents moved to a village called Mudzidzidzi. That's where I grew up there. And when I arrived there at Mudzidzidzi, I think I moved in 1961 or 62, if I'm not wrong. But by then I was doing standard 2. Yeah, I was in standard 2 when I moved to Mudzidzidzi, where I started schooling at Butalu. There were 2 schools in one. The lower primary was Butalu, which started from A up to standard 2. That was before the grades. But if we are talking in terms of grade, it was up to grade 4. Then the senior primary, it was Farisanani, which started at grade 5 up to grade 8 by then. Before grade 8 was done at secondary, that was standard 6. So in 1965, when I was about to do standard 6, I left school.
Why?
Busy, looking after the cattle, going up and down, doing all sorts of things, bird hunting, these other things that boys do,
So you were no longer interested in
I was not interested in school because at school we were, the teacher was teaching there, there were two teachers at senior primary school.
Yes.
For standard 3, 4, it was another teacher. Standard 5 and 6 is another teacher. They were doing, these 4 grades being 2, teaching these 4 grades being 2.
Yeah.
And it was a little bit boring.
Yeah.
When I grew up, during that time, I was not, rather not done it. At least I was performing very well.
Yeah.
And they will write tests. I will find that, I got all, tests very well, passed
100%.
very well, 100% and so on. And I got bored.
Yeah.
These other colleagues of mine, students, were not performing that much. So I ended up, leaving school for 4 years.
4 years?
Yes, that was 65, 66, 67, 68. And, my parents, because they were in Gauteng, they were in Johannesburg then, that was PWV, staying in Germiston, working, they will come during Christmas and they will go back before school's open.
Yeah.
And they won't even know that I'm not at school. I was, with my grandmother until 1968 when my father resigned from his work.
Yeah.
And that year he didn't want to go back. He didn't want to go back earlier because he was starting his own business.
Yeah.
And because he was starting his own business, he stayed longer than the normal time, and schools reopened before he left.
Yeah.
He realized that I was not going to school. One of my my father's younger brother's wife told my father that no, this one is no longer going to school. He's not attending school. So my father was shocked that I was not at school and he didn't even know. So from that day, he was very strict. My father was very strict and I, respected him very much and I loved him and I didn't want to disappoint him. So he, he said, from today you must go back to school. It was a little bit of a dramatic situation because I was nearly beaten for not going to school. And since that day, after a long talk with my father about schooling, why I shouldn't stay away from school, I must go to school, I started to realize that no, hey, to make my father happy, I must do what he wants. And indeed, when I went to school, I didn't have any problem, in terms of
because
performance.
you were performing well.
Yeah, I was doing very well. That's why even when I passed standard 6, I passed it in first class. That was 1969. I passed standard 6 in first class. I went to secondary school where I did Form 1, Form 2, Form 3, and I also passed JC in first class. And we went to Mpapuli, where I did Form 4 and Form 5, and I got what by then used to call exemption. I passed in M class. That was second class. It was not first class then. From there, the love of schooling was now increasing. But let me go back a little bit to 1969. When I went back to school in 1969, I got a teacher that made me to love education.
Yes.
The teacher was called Bokomnara.
Okay.
He was very strict and he taught all the subjects and he was very, very good. And I loved education since then because, even my performance was appreciated. My father then was very happy that at least now I'm school, and he used to monitor me from there. From that time, I started, loving school. Unfortunately, I couldn't go to the university because my father was not working very well in terms of university fees. I stayed there. I think after passing matric, I went to Teflop, where I spent about 2 to 3 weeks without registering because there was no money. By then, even bursaries were not there, and it was a little bit difficult. I had to come back and do, diploma in teaching, which was then called JSOC. That was the time when JSOC, Venda College, was starting here in Venda.
Yes.
I did my junior secondary teacher's certificate. And from there, I had to improve my education personally after working, because immediately after finishing my diploma, I started working as a teacher in 1977. And from there, I had to improve my education through correspondence.
Where was your first job?
I started teaching, at Katleong Secondary School just for a year. From there, I came back. My father said, no, you cannot stay here in town. It's not safe, because we were staying in Katleong, Natal Spruit, and the Katleong Secondary School was there, and the principal was Liepi Taonyane, the former president, the late president of Tuat. Then I came back and started teaching at Rambo, the secondary school. From there,
Which subject were you teaching?
I was teaching mathematics and biology. Those were my favorite subjects. Those, that I've taught, they remember me by, those subjects, because I was very good in those two subjects, mathematics and biology.
Let's come back before we proceed. We don't have the name of the mother and the father, and if I remember very well, you are the firstborn.
Yes, I am the firstborn. My father, he was also a firstborn. He was a traditional leader. I told you that we are from the royal family. He was, the Bamsanda at, a village, one of the villages at Kombani. In fact, 2 villages. So his name is, a royal leader or traditional leader, or a Wohosi name is Bamsanda Wokovanani. His real names, his original names, the Bo Tanyani Sakaria Gogome Tshifularo. And this Tshifularo is like I told you, is the surname which started from my father's grandfather.
Yes.
And my mother, the Bo Mushaisano Flora Tshifularo, Gogome Tshifularo. So the two gave birth to, we were 6 in number. Actually, we should have been, almost 9 or 10, but they lost some of the children before they grew up. It was myself as the firstborn, and then the secondborn is my brother, who is a teacher at Rambo, the secondary school, and followed by my brother, who is an ENT specialist, Professor Mashudu Tshifularo, and then followed by Professor Nyaweli Tshifularo, who is also a pit surgeon. He's a specialist in medicine, and these two are medical doctors. They are specialists. The first one is ENT specialist, and the second one is a specialist in PIDS. It's a PIDS surgeon. It's a medical doctor. It's a professor at Medunsa. The other one is a professor at University of Pretoria. And then followed by a girl who is also a teacher. It's a very high qualified teacher in biology. She has got masters in biology. And then the last one it's a male. It's a chartered accountant, Shumani Tshifularo. So all in all, we are 6 alive.
Okay.
It's myself, Joshua, Mashudu, Nyaweleni, Rufuno, and Shuman. We are all, I can rather say we are all highly educated through the influence of our parents.
Was the father also educated, or how far?
My father told me that he left school while doing standard 5, before standard 6, because of poverty. He lost his father while he was still very young. He had to look after his younger brothers and the mother. There were 4 in number. It was my father and his 3 younger brothers. They all, they were all not that much educated through this problem that they lost their father while they were still very young. But what I realized, my father, the way he was so intelligent, I couldn't believe that he left school at standard 5. He was so intelligent. I don't know why.
What type of business was he doing already?
He was before he started business, he was working at railway as I don't know, manager or foreman or something like that, in Johannesburg, and then he started his own business as a taxi operator, and then salesman, selling clothes, and mostly those 2 were his own business, and he survived until he passed on.
So did any of the children took over the business, or are the taxis still operating already?
No, we tried to run those businesses, but due to the lack of skills in business, we all followed our careers in education, as we were all already by then. When he left, he died, we were all working, and we didn't
when did the father pass away, and when did the mother pass away?
My father passed away in 2003, in November, November 2003, and my mother passed away in 2015. That is 10 years after, 10 to how many years? 20, almost 12 years after my father's death.
We were at Ramboda as a teacher. Let's continue your journey.
No, as a teacher at Ramboda Secondary, I taught maths and biology from Form 1 up to Form 5, and I was, producing good results there. And I think I learned a lot from that school. From there, I went to Paswana Secondary School, where I also worked for 5 years. From Paswana, I was teaching those 2 subjects. From Paswana, I went to Mpapuri, where I spent about 3 years as a teacher or deputy principal there. From there, I was appointed as a principal at Tusarushaka. From Tusarushaka, I was appointed as an inspector in psychology in 1992, if I'm not wrong. 1992, I became an inspector in psychology. And from there, I went to Vuane as an inspector in psychology, and from Vuane I came to the district. By then it was called still a region. I remember when the new government took over, Venda became a region, and where I was also a head of psychological services at the regional office until it became a district in 2007. 2007 I acted as the CEO for Wembe FET College for 7 years, and then 2013 I went back to the district, and then I retired in 2015, yes.
Let's come to the leadership. I believe you are a member of ANC, you are a traditional leader. What are the leadership positions that you held?
Yeah, let me start with the traditional leadership, then I will come to the ANC, because ANC started, way back 1975, 76, when we started with the student uprising and everything. But with the traditional leader, by virtue of birth, I had no choice. When my father, because he was also a traditional leader, when he passed on, the family decided that no, somebody must take over his position, and after a year the family decided that I must take over his position. I didn't like it that much, because I preferred my profession. So but the family said no, I had no choice. I remember the intervention coming from Vamsanda Watemeli, who approached me and said, no.
The late Vamsanda Watemeli.
Yeah, the late Tahavu Bomko Watemeli said, no. He came and told me that no, you can't disappoint the family. The family, tried everything. The younger brother to my father, the two of them, pushed me. My mother, said, no, don't disappoint, because I didn't want this position. But ultimately, I, accepted the responsibility, where ultimately in 2004, on the 20th of November, I, was installed as Vamsanda in place of my father's position. So following my father's position. And I organized my things in such a way that, because I was given 2 villages, I have got 2, I don't know how we call them in English. I've got 2 bakomas, because there are 2 villages. Each village is,
Is that not petty headmen?
Yeah, because these are not, traditional leaders by virtue of birth. You appoint them. I think they are called petty headmen. I think that's the correct name. So there are 2.
Which villages are those?
The villages is Chipena and Chatar. At under Chikombani. We are under Bodusunzi as the overall policy for that village, because like I said, we are from the very same Lusunzi name. So when they realized that we have to appoint people, they took it from my family, because we are the Kotsumnen as well, from the very same royal family. So I'm in charge of those 2 villages. So it's easy, because I had to structure the civics and the royal family committee, which we call Koream Tabatsin, the royal council. I structured them in such a way that they run things without problem. They give me reports every now and then if there are problems. Of course, civics will deal with the civic matters such as services, issues that are dealt by, civics. They conduct them without any problem. And then the Koream Tawatsindi will also deal with the administration of, the royal side. So the 2 are running these things without any problem, and I just get report. Every Sunday in the morning we have meetings, try to address all those issues, the village issues. If there are problems, then they will tell me, we have got 1, 2, 3, this is how we have solved it, this is how we have done it. Then I will see how to come in and give relief. So that one is not a problem. Everything is going on so well. like I indicated, we are under Chivase authority.
Yeah.
We are all, administered by, the very, guidelines that, Coxstar are running, this thing. So this issue here, royal leadership, it doesn't give me any problem.
So maybe you also use the skills that you acquired, the administrative skills that you acquired in your career.
Yeah, to a certain extent, those skills are, being applied.
Yes.
They are being applied, and likely, these days, people do understand that when you do things, you have to do them according to the rule. And in my village, when we have a meeting, we must have an agenda.
Yeah.
We must indicate things that we are going to discuss, and it's time framed, because we don't just stretch until sunset. We have to say people must finish their meeting before 9, because most of the people will have to go to church. So if we have got a meeting, we start at 7. The agenda is known. Everything must be discussed, and solutions must be given. 9 o'clock, we're off. People are going. We're going to our churches, because these days, most of the people who are attend, these meetings on Sundays, they have to go to church. So we don't have any problem there.
Did it ever came across your mind that one day you will be occupying that position of traditional leadership?
No. Like I indicated, I didn't even want to. I didn't want that one. Even my father, the time when he was working in Gauteng, I didn't know that he was running away from this royal, leadership position. But the people at Chikombani had to follow him. He spent about more than 10 years without coming back home here. He told me that he was trying to run away from these things because he didn't want it, but he ultimately accepted it. And when he accepted it, I was already grown up. I could understand what was going on, but I never thought one day I would
come true.
Yeah, but I could hear people say, we are from this royal family, when we grew up. But I never thought it would come to my family, it will come to me, although I knew that it's in the
When was my father coronated to that position?
He didn't spend time, because when he was coronated, he was already very old and he was not well by then. That was in 2002.
Why is it that...
And it was just 2 years, he spent just 2 years, and then he passed away.
Why is it that people who are born to be in that position, they don't like to occupy that position? Most of them even run away. But those who are not meant for those positions, they fight for them, they push. Why is it like that?
I don't know why, those who are not, the real, royal leaders, fight, want them. And they don't even know that it's very difficult to be in that position. Those who are born, in that family, who are the genuine leaders, they don't, cause problems to look for those things. They will just push you, even if you don't want it. I don't know why it's always like that, but personally, I didn't want it. But I ultimately accepted. I said, okay, it's fine. I will lead.
Why is it difficult to occupy those positions? Is it true that people are in Venda, they say Umiriswashibindi? Is it true that people are targeted and being killed?
No, it's not true. It's not true. But of course, because people will be vying for those positions, they will struggle. They will cause problems for you if they cannot get it. Of course, you are a target. They will find a way of removing you. And in Venda, they say they will, they will kill you, or what will mean such being. But otherwise, it's a part of the game.
Did ascending to this position made you to change how you approach life? Maybe, for example, we understand Vamsanda, how do you call it? You don't call it Vamsanda, you call it in another name.
Bafuwi.
Bafuwi, musi vasatwambara maringa, ufunotoma, somebody must taste the food before.
No, that is when you don't trust those who are giving you food.
Yeah.
That is when you know that I've got a lot of enemies that might kill me. So you must make sure that your security is so tight that even when before you eat, you must make sure that at least the food that you are eating it's safe. It's it's not poisonous. Nobody is planning to kill you. But if you trust those who are cooking for you, those who are giving you food, you don't have to do that. You eat without any problems. But that type of arrangement is done when you know that there are people who are really wanting to be in your position, people who are causing problems for you, people who are your enemies, people who want to remove you. So of course you have to be very careful. You can't just eat things that you are not sure they are safe for you to eat.
So do you eat anywhere, like anybody's food from?
I usually, some of the things I'm not going to tell you because these are very, very rare. I know this document is going for public things, so I'm not going to tell you everything. There are certain things that we don't just discuss in public. But I let me not answer this. It's a little bit difficult to tell some of the secrets. But I'm just an ordinary person. I don't have to change, but I don't just eat anything. Personally, like I've taken this as my type of life. I don't just eat things that are not in my blood group. Usually things such as sugar, I avoid a lot of sugar. I think I once have told you that I don't drink, mostly cold drinks. Occasionally I can take, but I try to avoid it because I've studied in my studies. I realized that my blood group doesn't allow certain food. So I try to stick to that. Yeah, to be very, very strict because I love life. I drink a lot of water. I don't drink alcohol. I don't, smoke cigarette or anything that is a drug. Even when it comes to meat, I always check whether indeed this is right for my body. I eat according to my blood group. I try to be very, very, strict when it comes to that because that, affects my health. I was taught this when my brother, this younger brother, who's also a specialist, went to specialize. He called me and said, "Big brother, I'm going to school now. I'm going to specialize." Because he had a surgery here. He was a local doctor here. So he decided to specialize. He said, "Look, when I'm away, it will be very difficult for you to get some attention from doctors," because he was a family doctor for us. So he said, let me teach you some of the good things that you can do to remain healthy. He said, eat according to your blood group. Don't just eat any junk food that you find in the street. He taught me, I checked everything, and he gave me a book. I'm studying that book, and now in our phones we have got an app of blood group. It will even show you what type of food is good for your body. Ever since then, I tried to follow that, and I think it's working. I don't just eat anything. I try to be very strict.
Normally we are told children who are meant to be a Vamsanda or a traditional leader are prepared when they are young, and sometimes they are taken away. They don't grow where other children will be growing up. Was that the case with you? Obviously, you didn't realize that by then, but maybe when you look back, you can see that.
Now when I look back, I see there were certain times where I was not staying with my parents.
Yes.
I stayed sometimes with my grandparent from the maternal mother
Yes.
for some years.
Yes.
I didn't know why I stayed there. That
Yes.
That was even my father became a Bamsana.
Yes.
Yeah, but I stayed there, and later on I stayed with my grandmother, and my father was, somewhere.
Yes.
And usually it's done in a big family,
Yes.
where you realize that there are so many children and so many wives.
Yes.
So to protect the one that they want to become, he will be Bamsanda, they remove him from this big group and
Yeah.
put him somewhere, so that people mustn't even think that this one
Yeah.
is
So they don't see that.
yeah, he can't become a target.
Yeah.
And where he is put, they are going to put him somewhere where they are going to look after him.
Yeah.
The security will be very, very tight. These people will, look after him and train him and tell him, what to
Especially
do.
with
Not
the
to,
grand, what
yeah,
they're all doing there.
yeah, just to look after him, just to avoid any problem at home here, and just also to prepare him so that he mustn't think he is the leader, because he knows the father is the Bamsanda. Therefore, because I'm at this position, I might take
neglected, wanted.
They remove him just to remove the notion out of him, and that is a way of trying to protect him and to protect the current, Bamsanda. The boy must think that he's not loved, he's nothing, he's not going to be, and yet they know that this one is the one who is going to lead us. He doesn't stay there, and that is the arrangement in most of the families in Venom.
There's some certain rituals and teachings that when you look back now you realize, no man, those teachings and those rituals.
No, you are going too far. No, you are going too far. No, let's not go there, because there are certain things that are done, that you are trained, that we are told. But in certain families, there's nothing that is going on. But with me, there was nothing that, but I know, people are trained. But like I indicated, I'm trying to avoid certain, rituals or certain, secret, oral things that are done in families.
To people who will be watching this video or this podcast, I can attest they won't believe that we are witnessing or we are listening to Bamsana or Vafuwe or traditional leader.
Mm-hmm.
You are a doctor by profession.
Qualification.
Yes. You've got a very good track record. Now you're a traditional leader, but you're still humble as like nobody's business. It's unbelievable. Does this have anything to do with the upbringing and maybe the preparations? Because normally we're told,
yeah, I think it's in the blood.
Yes.
Like I told you, who are my other relatives. If you check, most of our relatives, the Pararara, the Chivasi, the Masingo, the Tshifularo, the Gogome, the Teme, we are very humble.
Yes.
I was told, that my great-grandfather, Gogome, Pararara Rusunzi, was a very intelligent, highly intelligent, handsome, and very cool.
Yeah.
somebody was telling me, or no, this man was light in complexion, tall, very clean, very humble.
Yeah.
So if I check from there, even my father was very, very, very clean, very clean. If you think I'm clean, I can't match his standard. My father was very clean, and he told me his father, and some people told me my grandfather was a gentleman, very clean, always very, very clean, but very humble.
Yeah.
So that's why I say it might be in the blood. My father was a very kind, very strict, very intelligent, very humble man. And I don't know whether I'm matching the standard or I'm trying to be there, but he always told me that Wananga Vatunde Mafura Badoli. In a way, saying that you must respect people, you must love people, you must be humble.
Exactly,
don't try to be pompous. That even if you have got anything, don't try to show off. Try to be humble and be among the people, live with the people, love people. And it's not being aggressive that will make people respect you. It's being humble, honest, kind, but you must be always alert. You must be careful all the time. Decide, carefully when you deal with people. So those teachings, I think they made me who I am today. Because even when you look at my younger brothers and my children, very, very humble, very kind. Sometimes you might not think that these people are so educated, but very humble. And that was the teaching we got from our parents.
Coming to that, I was very fortunate to have met your younger brother, Dr. or Professor JG Tshifularo. He operated me, I think he did 2 or 3 operations on me.
I see. Uh-huh.
When I met him, I first met him when he was still having a surgery here around.
Oh, yeah, in Toyando.
Yes.
That
then
was
later on,
30 years ago.
Yes. Later on in Polokwane, we met again.
Okay.
And like I said, I was very fortunate to have known you, the very calm old man, gentleman, very neat. Then when I met him again, then I said, but these people, they look the same, they behave the same, they're so humble, but they're highly educated. I even gave him a t-shirt, a soccer t-shirt for the England, one of the England's soccer teams.
I see.
Because we became very close. I told him, I know your older brother. I know you from the time when you're still there.
Okay.
But my person is your older brother.
Hey.
Then when I look at that, I say, but it's still amazing, to be honest. It's still amazing. Then I'm wondering, because I remember some years ago, I wrote a story about the most educated females in Venda. It was still Venda by then, for Peace magazine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Then I want us to link those 2 things. The humbleness, but, education-wise, those people, they're educated. Let's talk about this education. I hear you saying your father used to instill that you must go to school. But maybe you can share with the people, because it's important. People don't like education, and education is the key. You were also a leader in the Department of Education here in Vembe. Try to share with the people, what's the secret? How did you make it as siblings to be so influential to an extent that people, I believe many people will agree with me that in South Africa, people respect the vendors, that vendors are educated. But if we extend to that, people agree that initially it was the Mativas, then the Tshifularos. How did it come? I mean, people must hear from you directly. This is the opportunity to hear from one of them. How did you make it to make such a history?
No, I didn't know that it has got that, impact at that level. But honestly speaking, I think I give credit to my parents. Like I told you, when I grew up, in terms of performance at school, I didn't have any problem. Most of the people that I schooled together with, they know that I was performing very well.
Yeah.
But I got bored like any other boy when I was still young. I dropped out. Yeah, 4 years not at school until my father had to come back. My mother, staying in Gauteng together with my father. When they came back, they realized that I was not at school. They, advised me. They pushed me. In fact, they were very strict when it comes education. I had to go back to school, and when I went back to school, like I indicated earlier on, I got this good teacher. I give credit to him. He was one of my best teachers. Very, very strict, and because he was so strict and he was teaching us, I enjoyed education at school. And since then I realized that my father was becoming very happy because he realized that I was, attending school, and it made me love schooling. And there's a gap between myself and the one who followed me, my younger brother, about 10 years or so, if I'm not wrong. Like I told you, my mother lost,
some of the children.
Some of the children, about 3 after myself. When I finished schooling, my father called us. My father had, by then 4 wives, and my other siblings. We were many. I finished, my teaching. And he called us together and we sat down. He said, Joe, now you have finished schooling. You see, these are your siblings. They must all go to school.
Yes.
When now you have finished your schooling, you know what is needed. Now your responsibility is to influence, to guide them, to help them to go to school. When it comes to books and everything, because by then, books were not, just given at school. You will have to, the parents will have to buy, pay school fees, everything, uniform and everything. He said, no, I will do everything. Yours is to make sure that they all go to school. So I remain with them, and indeed.
Maybe he was cautious that if he doesn't give you that responsibility, they might bank school and
they might follow what I did, like my younger brother who also not nearly did what I did. I had to be very strict. I was very, very strict when it comes to that because I wanted to please my parents. I respected and loved my father very much. Whatever he tells me to do, I will do as he says, because I could see that my father is happy. So I made that a point that when he comes back in December time, I will produce the books, I will check the books, and you see, they are going to school. I'm monitoring them. And by then I was a teacher. It was quite interesting. I started enjoying education. My younger brothers also enjoyed it. Because in that meeting where my father called us for that discussion, when he finished, he said, I'm calling you to make sure that you look after your siblings to go to school. He left, and then I remained with them. I said, okay, brothers and sisters, all of you seated here, you must tell me what you want to do when you finish school. All of you must make choices. You must write down and tell me. They all wrote. I want to be a teacher, I want to be a doctor, I want to be, I want to be a doctor, I want to be this and that. They all wrote down. And I recorded that one, and I followed that until they all finished. If they can tell you how they all finished schooling, I'm telling you, because they didn't have problems in terms of their IQ. Performance-wise, they were very good. Mine was just to monitor them. to encourage them, to appreciate them, to motivate them. You know, I taught most of my siblings, even the one who followed me. When I finished, when I started teaching, he was doing Form 2.
Okay.
These professors some of them were still in primary, and when they joined, secondary, I was already a teacher. So it was easy for me to motivate them. And I wanted to impress my parents.
Yes.
And performance-wise, they were very good.
Yes.
And in terms of monitoring, I was doing my job.
Yes.
So we enjoyed education, and we liked education until today. Even my children, I've got 3 children who are medical doctors.
Sure, that's wonderful.
They finish schooling, and everything is going on. We don't have any problems in terms of performance at school.
Yeah.
What is needed is discipline and motivation.
Yes.
Because that is very key.
Yeah.
Children, when they go to school, they need somebody as the role model. They need to see somebody as the role model. If there is a role model, somebody, a leader, somebody who has got integrity, somebody who's behaving very well, educated, who has got a very good character, they follow him easily. So that's why even my younger brothers in the family, we didn't have any problem. We followed, the leaders who were in the family.
Do you think the traditional leadership is still relevant, or is playing its role in the today's time?
No, traditional leadership will never be replaced. It's very, very important. According to my observation and according to what I've seen, they are still very relevant, and they are very Look at what is happening in Great Britain today.
Yeah.
Look at, in Arabic, countries. In Japan, leadership, real leadership is still needed. It's just that, we're mixing things here in our country because we think that they are no longer needed. But I'm telling you, you will never ever replace traditional leadership. That is, very, very important in life. According to my observation, then according to what I see, we are still, needing this, leadership, because they play a key role in our lives.
I hear you saying you are working with the Sanko and other structures. In some areas, they have a serious problem where there is no good relationship between Mahosi and the Sanko or those structures. How are you making? How is it that you are making sure that you are able to have a good relationship with that? What's the secret?
Sanko, it's an English name which means South African Civic Organization.
Yes.
And it's South African National Civic Organization.
Yeah.
Civic, it's people.
Yes.
And in Venda culture or traditional leadership, we have got, Koro ya Mtawatsindi and Koro ya Vantu, where it's a civic. It's a committee made of people who are representing people.
Yeah.
So when it's westernized, when it's given a name that is westernized, and the behavior is sort of opposing the real, traditional leadership, that's where there's a clash. If you can see the structure of civic, theirs is to look at, the activities such as civic services, provision of services, issues such as roads, issues such as supply of electricity, water. Those, civic matters are done by the Sanko, or what we call nationally Sanko. And the royal leadership, the Koro, we have got issues that are to be dealt with by the royal committee, Koro Zamtawatsindi, where its governance, people don't have to, civic don't have to come here. And when it comes to traditional leaders, so the two, they don't clash, provided you explain to them, you as civic, these are your functions. The royal, committees, these are your functions. And the two don't clash. And if they understand each other, there won't be any problem between the two. And with me, I understand the two because I was in civics.
Yes.
I know, with my little education that I have and my little political, inclinations and experience, it's easier to understand what the civics are. Except in cases where you find that these civics are so new, they don't even understand their roles and the functions. They mix things. They think when they're civics, they even do the traditional leadership roles. That's where we find that we have got clashes. But otherwise, there's no clash between the two.
Let's go back to the time when you were still at Mpapuri as a student. Who were some of their classmates?
Oh,
more especially maybe because that school is known to have produced political leaders.
At Mpapuri, I remember vividly now. I was in the same class as Matata Tsetu, Professor Nasengani, the late Professor Lillian Mope was my classmate, Richard Nevtaru. No, there are many. Manda Manyache, you can mention most of them. We schooled together with Chipua Mope, although they were one class ahead of us. Tiatu Madima, I'm just mentioning Joyce Mohale. Those were my, George Padaki, those were my classmates, at Mpapuri High. The original Mpapuri, where it is here at Rarushiero Secondary School, before it moved to the now Mpapuri. It was here at Rarushiero Secondary. That was the old Mpapuri High School, where the president, Cyril Ramaphosa, Dick Raushai, William Dow, Joe Raulinga. I'm mentioning people who are publicly known by most of the people. Those were our, elder brothers in terms of education. Although people don't separate them, but they were our senior brothers in terms of education.
You are, as of now, you are a member of council in one of the universities, if not two. Can you tell us about that?
Oh, yeah. With leadership in councils, I was a council member of the University of Venda for 2 terms.
Yes.
After that, I was appointed by the minister to be a council member at the Northwest University for 2 terms. Now I'm also a ministerial appointee at the University of Sifako Mahato, a health sciences university, the former Medunza. This is my first term now, currently. I'm at that university. This morning I was looking at one of my t-shirts. I said, I wanted to put on that t-shirt. I said, no, I mustn't put on this t-shirt. Otherwise it will influence, the discussion. I didn't want you to mention this one. I never thought you would ask this question. But I'm currently a council member of the Sifako Mahato University, Medical University.
How does it feel to have the opportunity to have led in those positions from Wembe, the FET, being council member of those universities, up to where you are now?
Like I indicated earlier on, it's quite an experience because when I was the CEO of acting CEO for Wembe FET before it became a TVET. You manage everything.
Yeah.
You understand the finances. You understand, the HR matters. You understand the teaching, the curriculum, the whole curriculum matters. You understand, everything, the learning, everything, the supply chain, all those things you have to study and understand and be able to manage. I was the CEO, I was the principal, the accounting officer. I had to understand all these things. For 7 years, apart from the fact that I was heading the curriculum at the district for almost 4 to 5 years in Wembe district in the Department of Education. With that experience carried to the college, I managed to maneuver and develop the whole college to where I left it now. That's why it's going on, because during that time it had only 3 campuses.
Yeah.
We managed to establish other campuses like Chisimani, Shingwezi, and Tengwe, and Mashamba was now fully fledged.
Yes.
By then, when I left, it had 7 campuses. Wembe FET College before it became TVET College.
Yeah.
Because Wembe TVET College means all those campuses into one college. To develop and to manage to run those campuses, 7 as they were, it was quite an experience.
Yeah.
This experience, I carried it to the University of Venda, where I was a council member.
Yeah.
And it helped me to understand, the dynamics in higher education, because as a council member, you are expected to serve in sub committees, the committee, the Senate, the student, oversight committee, the appeals committee, the remuneration committees, or the risk committees. Those committees where I served, I was learning a lot of finance committees. I was learning a lot of experience. And this, I carried them to Northwest University, where I served 2 terms, and we transformed the university to where it is now, with quite a number of leaders there. I served under Judge Kruger, for those terms that I was serving as my chairperson. I even became the deputy chairperson of the council there, and we did a lot of things under Professor Den Hwari. From there, when I was appointed here at the Sifako Makato University, the old Medunsa now, I'm carrying those experience, and I'm learning a lot. I'm serving in quite a number of committees, about 3 committees there, and my experience from this 4 institutions that I've mentioned to this university, I think it's helping me to understand and assisting that institution right now, and I find it quite enriching in terms of management.
Your father and your mother were migrant workers.
Yes.
And this brings to the question where people always vendors are very small
in number.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But my little understanding is that whenever our fathers will go to Joburg, when they bear children there, those children, they themselves might also change surnames, and also the children will never know that they were vendors, they will disappear. What do you think? Because in some quarters people say vendors are very intelligent, highly educated and all those, but on the other hand they are not proud of themselves. They hide. That's why they change their surnames. They don't want to be known as vendors. Some of them, when you meet them in Gauteng, they don't speak the language. Why is it like that?
I don't know how this is, but you see this in vendor people. whether it's in the culture or whether it's in the blood or whether it's in the genes, vendors by nature are not, they are not aggressive.
Yes.
They are not pompous.
Yes.
They are not, they are cool. They are always very reserved.
Yes.
And yet, I don't know how. There was once a commission, research commission by the late Minister of Education, Kadasmal, who said he just want to check why are vendors so intelligent in terms of math, science, biology, and accounting. Why are they performing so well? They wanted to check that, because if you check, recently in social media there was an article saying that in Africa there are 5 tribes that are highly intelligent. It was the Igbo in Nigeria, the Venda in South Africa, and the other 3 I can't remember right now out of my head, but it circulated. Venda people are highly intelligent but very reserved. You don't find them in places where they are not talkative, they are not pompous, and they are so shy in such a way that when they are amongst people, they don't emerge as vendors. That's why most of them ultimately change their surname and give a different surname, pretending not to be vendors, because vendors by nature they are like that. I don't know why it's always like that, but maybe you as journalists, people might dig out and find out why it's always like that, because there are so many people who are known. Originally they are vendors, but when you look at them, they have changed their names, they've changed their tribes. They are no longer say they are vendors. Like in my case, when I took my ID, I first took my identity document in Germiston. The spelling was not Tshifularo, it was Tshifularo. Tshifularo, like a Tswana surname, because my father took his ID there and it was Tshifularo, until we changed. When I was educated, I said, no, this Tshifularo is not Tshifularo, it should be Tshifularo, T-S-H-I. But originally it was Tshifularo, and even when I finished schooling, it was Tshifularo. But people will say Tshifularo, but when I write my surname, it was Tshifularo. And yet we know it's Tshifularo, it's not Tshifularo. So this is happening, but I don't have an answer. I don't know why things are like that, but maybe some people who have done research, some who are educated older than me or better than me, might be able to have to give answers why vendors are so intelligent, although it's the smallest tribe here in South Africa. It's one of the smallest, but it's one of the most intelligent group. Secondly, why are they shy to reveal their identity in other public places? They hide, or they become shy. They don't say they are vendors. We know most of the vendor people today who have changed the surnames. You find a person who is also Munyai, but you find the spelling is not the Munyai that we know. Tshifularo, you find Tshifularo, and I can give you quite a number of examples. I don't know what is the answer to your questions.
What do you think is the solution to balance the effect of COVID-19 and the education? Because we have seen the effect of COVID-19 in the results, metric results in November. As a qualified and experienced educationalist, what do you think maybe can bring things to normal? What can be done?
Yeah, that will take time, but You see, now education is shifting, although we cannot replace a teacher.
Yeah.
It's shifting to e-education.
Yes.
People are learning even from home.
Yes.
You know, technology is assisting people to learn.
Yes.
But the arrangement that is being done, and after classes, catch-up classes that teachers are doing here in Venda, you move around here compared to other places in South Africa. You move around in Venda.
Yes.
After school, there are classes that are conducted for mathematics, for biology, for physical science, accounting, this difficult subject. You find that there are private, classes that are conducted in Venda, trying to catch up whatever is lost. Even when they go back home, children are still learning. And, the curriculum advisors are very key because, managers are there just to assist in leadership and give instruction. But curriculum advisors, because they have got the knowledge of this subject, I think if we use them and the technology that is being, applied now, the e-learning in computer and everything, that I think will, address the issue. And, more research needs to be conducted at university level. What is it that can be done? We need to conduct researches on, under this condition, what further steps can be taken to address, this issue, COVID, so that, education shouldn't, suffer much. I think research by universities can also help.
In some few years, there was a report after, I'm not sure if it was a commission about the corruption of jobs for PALS or job positions were paid for in the Department of Education. I also had an opportunity to have a copy of that report.
I couldn't see it, that one.
You didn't see it?
I didn't see it, but I know it was happening. I mean, we read the newspapers, we saw, we are also victims of such things. When people say, if you don't pay so much, you are not going to get this position. It was, the allegations were said to be done by certain teacher unions and everything. But I haven't read the report. I won't be able to articulate it with facts, but I've read it in the
for your own
interest.
For your own interest, I'll make sure that you get that copy.
I'll be very happy to read, to see.
But then, we know that most of the time you will hear that if you want that certain position, even for just a CS, you call it CS1?
Yeah, CS1, teacher level position.
Yeah, first level, you have to pay for that. That's what people are saying.
It was happening.
Yes.
We heard that it was happening.
So the concern is, with this rich history and the landmark that we made in the Department of Education, how is it possible if a CS1 is given the position because she or he paid a certain amount of money or some favors were exchanged along the way? Some is even worse because are becoming HOD because there are some favors that have been happening, and those people are not capable. Some of them that doesn't even understand a thing, that doesn't have a clue about education. They go as far as being deputy principals, up to those higher levels. Don't you think that is having a serious effect?
It does to a certain. Can I just attend to something then?
Thava nenda ndosumbedzisa uri ukopfara una zipo zvinonzi kurengesiwa, dzimwe ndi ziposo za ndeme dzinonga dza HOD, dzimwe ndidza uprincipala, dzimwe dza deputy principal. Ndikori Thavani ine ndivona uri zvithu zviya kwama mvelaphanḓa ya vhana na matshelo a shango. Onesa muthu o shumaho kha maimo ophambananaho a pfunzo, ndi khou ḓi ri vho vha a ṱaluse vhupfu havho uri no vha sa zwiḓivhi uri khou rengisiwa ngafhi nga nnyi. Vha ri mini nga izwo zwithu?
Zwa vhukuma hezwi zwithu zwi khou dina, zwi tonga vhulwadze nyana ngori ri khou ḓi a pfha mavheve hafha dzi poso dzine dza khou rengisiwa. Pfha muthu a tshi ri hei ndo balelwa poso, hei yo vha i khou rengisiwa ya vhoniwa nga ndi part ya zwithu zwine ra zwi vhidza uri ndi corruption, and zwi khou ṋaṋa. mara saizvi riti kuamba ari tova na vathu kana vaviri vararo vane atodha na evidence ari keina ndoirenga mara wadi zviipfa zvorino hezvizvo zvihone zvikoitera zviaffecta nga maanda system yote education ngori chautoma nidowana uri muthu orenga yoyo boso onirengiselaho angava muthu ane nichicheka capacity yawe na competence kahene vuimo vune angava urenga asatozvikona zvavudhi nawana uri mumwe muthu ane akona kamusinga uri ongokona urenga kana ongokona ubvisa chelede asingoiwana zviamba zviri na performance yaula orenga uposo ido affecta the results, it affect the performance in education yote per se. So that's why ndichiri hezvo zvithu ndivulwadze hune uri vupele zvikotoda uri at least huve na measures dzine dzava very very strict vathu vadove vatohumbula zvavhudi vavalavirese competence usedziwe vukoni havathu usaiwe kamafungo avathu ngori ndinyobhadhera wobhadhera kugangwe ndi corruption inokupfisa vutomi ngamanda womseka
hona lengwe line vapfore va nga todo li amba va li tahisa uri li swike kha vone va podcasting
zvine ndabona ungari khamusi zvingaitiwa kha vuchinyoto raro ari ri khonogota khaile lele ravari pamba loni zvino la corruption ndi musi khamusi mulayo wo tighteniwa nga ndira ine havana some measures dzine dzava so deterrent rine dzakona ustopa uri muthu achuwe ukhakha achizida zvori ndaita 1 2 3 ndidzodzhena kakathinini ndasatokona ubva otherwise asava naizvo zvithu hazvingaperi zvidodhi continue zvichiyapanda muna wanga so zvazvinovo ndikovona uri ari todiva zvori what must be taken ngauri arini richikocheka hene zvingoti ndi crime hezvo zvithu if we check ridodhi rino mapurisa vadofara mara mapurisa nangwe vafara vadoisa muthu avo magistrate kana court achisvika nge court vo magistrate na majaji na zvote na prosecutor vachisedza mulayo vaona uri muthu okhakha so mulandu wahone ufuna upanishwa so vamuisa jere achisvika jere ola muthu ange correctional service navone vadola vesora muthu oda ana mulandu mungapa chigweva chawo ndi chingapa huna uriya zvine zvafunitwa zvamba zvori anenge iparliament hune milayo yaitwa hone ndione hune vafuna uita mulayo une wakona ukaidza vathu dzimvalo dzavo vaopa ukhakha ngodiwa zvori ndakhakha soyi punishment yahone ndi hei and ivavo pirisa zvine ndatozviwana sendakhakha so ari hakonoitwa zvithu zvine ngakuarari something deterrent that will talk to our conscience what you are doing is wrong. If you do 1 2 3 you are going to be punished severely because of 1 2 3 such that people will be so afraid to do wrong things. Zvasasvika hapo we are still having a lot of problems because people will continue knowing now ndaitwa ndakhakha mulandu une ndadotangana nawe ndingakona uimelela chigwevo chahone it's not so severe ndikwine ndiite zvine ndakuita nango zvokhakheya ndizobenefita upirisa pain ine ndangaifa so ari haitwa mulayo une wasumbedza punishment ine muthu okhakha adodiwa zvoti ndakhakha ngaurari punishment yahone ndikulwanise zvitopungudza nyana mulayo mapurisa vadoita mushumo wavo vadofara vosingisa vasingisa vajere vadoita mara mulayo wone une ari uhone une wava deterrent zvidopungudza crime ine rava nayo mafungo asidhiraka dzine dzako zvokomwana changoloti rasatova strict kamafungo asidhiraka iyi ridova na problem. Thank you.